Oil and gas makes modern life possible. The energy the world requires today and tomorrow will come from decisions made in the oil field today. Oil and gas will remain the leading source of fuel to power affordable energy that is sustainable for the billions of people that depend on the success of the industry. The oil field is a group of people, companies, technologies, and institutions working towards providing the world with safe, clean, storable, and transportable power. The Oilfield 360 podcast is a 360-degree deep dive into the leaders of the industry who will provide listeners with a first-hand account of what it takes to build, maintain, and lead the energy business into the future. The Oilfield 360 podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors. United Airlines. As Houston's hometown airline, United has long been the preferred carrier of the energy sector. United for Business offers a range of programs and discounted travel options built for all of your energy, resource, and marine travel needs. Get started at united.com/business. Simmons Energy, a division of Piper Sandler, one of the largest and most experienced energy investment banking firms in the industry, offering M&A advisory, capital markets execution, and investment research. For more information, please visit SimmonsPSC.com. Prang & Associates, the global energy search leader. Prang & Associates is the world's leading executive search firm totally dedicated to the energy industry. Over our 39 years, we have assisted more than 750 management teams and boards in 75 countries and conducted nearly 3,600 engagements. For more information, please visit prang.com. Daniel Energy Partners, in-basin research you can trust. A leading provider of U.S. oilfield research, known for its original boots-on-the-ground research approach, as well as its famous barbecue events. Daniel Energy Partners utilizes both its extensive network of top oilfield professionals and frequent in-basin field tours to provide real-time market intelligence. Visit danielep.com for information. Locked-in Global Energy and Marine, uncommonly different. Locked-in is the world's largest privately owned insurance broker and risk finance advisor. Locked-in's global energy expertise is centered in Houston and represents the largest concentration of energy specialists, clients, in the upstream, midstream, and downstream segments of the oil and gas industry. Visit lockedin.com for more information. Upright Digital. Upright Digital specializes in partnering with your business to maximize marketing efficiencies. We have a deep understanding of people, their needs, motivations, behaviors, as well as the technologies that enable brands in many industries to utilize what is available in a changing digital landscape. Find us online at uprightdigital.com.
Welcome to the Oilfield 360 podcast. We are coming to you live from the Flecha Azul Tequila podcast studio in Houston, Texas. That is a mouthful as usual. We are actually in the Flecha Azul studio with our new Flecha Azul sign that I'm staring at. And I'm joined, as always, by the co-host extraordinaire, Mr. David DeRote. How are you, sir?
Doing all right, my friend. How are you doing?
Did you feel the energy in that week?
You know, it was pretty good. It's pretty good. It's been a little bit of been a minute, I guess you could say.
Yes.
But you didn't screw it up too bad.
Well, that's take two. I did the first one. I stuttered over myself.
At least we're honest, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna edit. The audience will never know, but it's we're gonna see. I'm on espresso number 3 today.
Yeah.
I told our guest, who we'll introduce here in a minute, that I have one objective, and that is to peak on caffeine the moment these things start. So, How have you been? You've been busy.
Been busy. Been well.
What is your favorite saying when you talk about how busy you are? Because I call you and you give me one of 3 different comments. So what would you say is? I said, David, how you doing?
Drinking out of a fire hose today.
That's a good one. My favorite that you say is, I'm boiling the ocean.
Yeah.
Which I love. I think it's one of my favorite sayings of yours, to boil the ocean. So, well, we're back in the studio's taking a minute to get ready. You can, when you guys look at us on our new YouTube or on our YouTube channel, you're going to see a couple things when you look at the studio. Kind of back here, there's no more. There's sheetrocks cleaned up. The tables, that's the only thing we're missing. Yep. Jamie Stewart and Inquest are making us some tables.
Yeah.
But those will be done within the week.
Yeah, they look awesome.
They're going to be awesome.
Yeah.
We've got a fire going on our TV. I mean, this looks like it's we're in the mountains.
Yeah.
Speaking of Stewart, and I promise you, secret guest. We're going to get to you in a second here. My favorite thing to do is Rob Stewart.
Oh yeah, love Needle and Rob.
God, I want to bring him on the show, but it's so much fun to make fun of him for not being on the show that I'm afraid. I mean, I don't want to lose that because he's so pissed he's not on it.
He's dying to come on, even though now he won't admit it.
It's so funny. So I don't know. We might have Rob Stewart on, and we might just drag him out another year.
We might have him back. We might have him on with Jamie, his brother.
That'd be even better.
Yeah,
That's exactly what we should do.
Yeah.
Is make him bring Jamie on the show. Oh man. Well, who do we have here today, my man? Introduce
Man,
us.
we've got a longtime friend and a client, Rutger Niers. He's joining us from Canada, and
well, he's in the studio. For those listening, he's from Canada.
Yeah,
but he's in the studio.
We tried to do this a month or two ago.
Right.
We had some stuff, the COVID scares and this COVID reality and travel restrictions and this, that, and the other. It's just been wreaking havoc on a lot of our friends in the oil field that are either Canadian citizens or guys that are down here doing business in Canada, and I'm hoping things will change here pretty soon. I like to go fish in British Columbia every now and then, and hopefully the border open up quick. So
You and me both, yeah, for sure.
absolutely. And we have whitefish in common, and we were trying to get together and whitefish. We weren't able to do that. So, Rutger, great to see you here. Thanks for being here. We're glad to have you on. It's been a long time coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you're up to and how you got in the oil field and all that good stuff.
Well, first off, thanks for having me here, guys. Just like you said, we've been trying to line this up for a while, and our mutual friend Howard Ruff has been strongly encouraging that from both sides. So I don't know if you know Howard, Josh, but
David knows everybody.
yeah. So
I know David, which means I know everybody.
right,
Yes.
exactly, by extension.
Yes.
Yeah, guilty or not, right?
That's right.
And so
You want to be
but-
careful about who you tell people how you know Howard Ruff or that you know Howard Ruff.
I have the same mentality when I say David DeRote. I'm like, I never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for having us, or thank you for having me. Been checking out the podcast, and again, I'm a little bit old school, so the podcasting is a bit new to me. So, but it's very interesting, and I like some of the previous guests you have had on, and so I very much appreciate you having me on.
Is this your first podcast you've ever done?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, boy, as you can tell, I'm not the youngest guy around. So, to ask for a bit of history might take all the time we have.
Well, you're not old until you're 90. That's what I tell
Fair
my older
enough.
friends.
Yeah.
so.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I like that way of thinking. So, I've been in the oil patch directly since 2004. And indirectly since 1998, I believe. So I used to be in the banking business. Originally, I was born in Holland, in Netherlands, and my family bought a slaughterhouse in about 2 hours south of Calgary. And so I went from Amsterdam to a little town called Fort Macleod, Alberta, and so and was introduced to the oil patch there, and went to university in Edmonton, and kind of went back and forth around. Back to Europe and lived out in Vancouver on the left coast there for a little while, and learned that I didn't want to stay there for too long. That just didn't jive with what I'm about. So came back to Calgary in 1998, and I was in the banking world, and we had corporate, commercial, a little bit of investment, a little quasi equity, those kinds of deals where the oil patch, the especially the gas side of things was really starting to take off, and so we spent a lot of time. The bank that I was with, I won't mention names, but the bank I was with at the time decided that they didn't want to be in the E&P space anymore. So we decided, my boss and I decided we were going to go and set the world afire on the oil field services side. So we went from basically $0 to $1.5 billion of oil field service side exposure, I guess, within the span of a couple of years. And so I was always drawn to that side of things because people were hardworking, honest, worked hard, played hard, always, but you always kind of got what you saw, right? There was never a whole lot of interpretation, which was nice, right? There's lots of times where you have to read between the lines. Well, I don't like that. And so it was great. So one of my clients came up to me, a little while into it and asked if I'd considered joining them in a CFO capacity, and I was very hesitant. He had thoughts about going public. He wanted me to be CFO, and I was like, nah, I know what to do with the numbers once they're prepared. I've got a finance background, but if you're asking me to put them together, you're looking at the wrong guy, right? So, and especially in Canada, it seems like the CFO role in Canada is largely an accounting role, whereas the CFO role in the U.S. is more of a finance role. And so, if you want to be, become a public company CFO in Canada, generally speaking, you have to have a CPA. And so I said no. I kindly passed on it. We kept talking, and it was 18 months later I joined his company. It was a company called Pure Energy Services at the time. We were private. We didn't know what the heck I was going to do, so I got the role that you give to everybody that you don't know what to do is VP of Corporate Development, right? So that's the old title I got there. And so we were intent on growing, and we were hoping to get into the public markets at some point. So I joined in July of 2004. I had a 2-year-old and a 6-week-old daughter at the time, and we backed the truck up. And so I said, okay, this is my opportunity. Let's go. We remortgage a house. I have the best wife in the world. She was very supportive. I'm a lot of times thinking, am I crazy doing what I'm doing? But we remortgaged everything. We said, okay, let's go. If we're going to do this, let's go do it. And so that was 2004 in July, and Emily had literally been born in June. On June 22nd, I started right after Stampede. And so this is a little funny aside. So I'm looking for Kevin, and you guys have been to Stampede before, right?
Yeah.
So Stampede can be a little distracting. So let's put it that way.
Stampede is awesome for those of you who've never been. It is, I mean, just to give the audience a example of what Stampede is, it's the Houston barbecue with, I feel like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just a bigger party. It almost feels like a bigger party.
It's like the Canadian Super Bowl. What are you
Well,
talking
that's
about?
what it is. It's like the barbecue that's the 3-day barbecue at the front end of the Houston Rodeo that party scene lasts for 2 or 10 days or whatever.
10 days.
Yeah.
10 days of debauchery. And
Yes.
when you're young and full of stuff, then you can make it last for 10 days.
Yeah.
And now you get very specific as to which.
I'll go Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. Tuesday is actually the good day to go. But
Okay.
yeah, Tuesday is usually when we go. But so anyways, I was waiting to go, and so Kevin Delaney, the old CEO for Pure Energy, he was supposed to get me a contract, and it was Stampede Parade Day, and so I was anxiously, we always had a little thing where we'd go golfing morning of Stampede Parade, and so I'm coming into town, and I'm trying to get a hold of Kevin because I'm supposed to start the following week, and I don't have a contract, I don't have an offer letter, right? And my wife is there with our 6-week-old daughter, and no, not even at that point, and brand new daughter and a 2-year-old, and she's going, are you sure about this? We just don't worry about it. So anyways, I found Kevin in the basement of the International Hotel in downtown Calgary, and we, of course, he didn't have the offer letter with him, but we had a good time that afternoon. But anyways, I started in early July there. We were at that point in time, we were flowback, and so well testing and frac flowback and wireline. So we were full service on the wireline side. We had slick line, E-line, we had the whole full gamut of things, and flowback and well testing. And then we grew. We actually ended up buying a drilling rig company, a dear friend of ours that we'd worked with for a long time, Dave Hemsing. He's still, we're still doing business together today. And so we ended up growing the business quite a bit. We were able to take the company public in 2006. We went public with the intent of starting a frac business. Well, we did start a frac business. We had since 2004, we also moved into the U.S. We started out in a Jonah field in Wyoming, and so Encana was down there, and so we were able to get into the Jonah field, and that's how we got that was our foray into the U.S. oil field. And then we went from the Jonah field into the Grand Junction, which at the time the Piance was rocking and rolling, and so we built a couple of frac spreads, and then the world kind of fell apart in 2009. We were rocking and rolling, and the world kind of fell apart, and long story short, we were sitting there, I think in 2009, and so my dear wife, who's completely trusting in what I do, and I'm coming home now saying, good thing we're young, honey. At the time we were young. We're starting over. So we thought we were done. It was not a good or comfortable situation to be in. Very reminiscent of last year. So we decided at that point in time we better restructure the company, and so we ended up doing a deal to grow our flowback and wireline business. We bought a company by the name of Canadian Subsurface at the time, which the CEO there, his name is Brad Gable. He's our lead director for Edge OFS today. So we put the two companies together. We had $100 million worth of combined debt and negative EBITDA, so it was fairly uncomfortable. But then we went and we sold the drilling rig business back to Dave. We ended up selling the frac business, and we got our balance sheet in order. And in 2012 we sold the company. So
that was good timing.
yeah, it was very good timing. And so I'd moved down to Denver in 2010 when we did the deal with Canadian Subsurface. There was three of us in Calgary, and Calgary was a de minimis market at that point, and we were saying, okay, that's basically status quo. Where the opportunity was to grow the business was here in the States. So I moved my family down. Again, I've got a great wife.
Yeah.
I had three kids by that point, and so the five of us moved down to Denver. And had a great time in Denver. It's a great city. It's kind of a sister city to Calgary. A lot of similarities. And then we sold in 2012. I moved back up to Calgary in 2013. I stayed with FMC Technologies, bought Pure Energy at the time. Stayed there till basically September of 2016. Am I going on too long here?
No. That's
okay,
good.
Stayed there till September 2016. There's a lot going on at that point in time. 2016 obviously wasn't a good year either. And so we had actually, earlier that year, we had been trying to sell the wireline business, the old Pure Energy wireline business. It wasn't central or core to what FMC was trying to accomplish with on the completion side. And so we were finally in a position where they were wanting to sell that piece of the business, and that's where Brad and I got re-engaged again. And that's how we ended up with our current equity sponsors is Edge Natural Resources. They stepped in and bought the wireline business, which is now called Reliance Oilfield Services. So
Called what?
Reliance Oilfield Services. Yeah. And so it was based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Edge Natural Resources had made an investment into that company, and so Reliance was the company that bought that, and it was a complete North American platform of wireline. So
Pretty sizable operation too.
yeah, we got about 80 trucks, and so kind of spread out between the two countries, and I think we have 13 operating bases, and so from Fort St. John, British Columbia, down to Estevan, Saskatchewan, and then we've got Colorado and the Permian, and we were in a couple other areas or locations before, but again, everybody's had to make some difficult decisions here over the last little while. But we're.
And you're back in Calgary now.
Yes, sir.
What's going on in Calgary? That's one of our favorite cities.
It's sad, to be honest.
It's just sad all the way around.
The last I read somewhere, there was 13 million square feet of vacancy in Calgary. Like it's almost 30%. 13
That's one of the best
million
business cities in North America.
Yep.
That is a shame to hear that.
It is, and so the plus 15s. I mean, that's salespeople make a living working the plus 15s.
So
right?
the plus 15s, for those who don't know, those are the walkways between buildings.
Correct.
That you can just connect to all the different buildings. And you never have to go outside.
When it's minus 30 below,
you don't want to go outside.
It's a pleasure to have those plus 15s.
There's a reason Houston has tunnels too. Mm-hmm. People don't want to walk on the streets.
Exactly,
either.
same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, the plus 15s have been devastated, right? So businesses, like long-standing businesses that have been around, it's just empty. It's like it's a ghost town.
Mm. Yeah.
So, it's going to take probably. My neighbor is also a friend. He's a commercial real estate broker, and he thinks it's decades in the making to fix this in Calgary.
Decades?
Yeah. Well, 13 million square feet. That's, you don't
I
absorb
mean,
that over.
that is tough to hear that, because I mean, look, a lot of those companies were oil and gas companies as well,
Yeah.
and they're gone, and there's nothing going on up there at all.
Well, so, one of the things that was always frustrating being on the service side of things was it always seemed like whenever there was a downturn or there's a blip, the E&Ps would basically lean on the service companies, right? So the service companies always ran pretty lean, but the E&Ps were fairly bloated. And a lot of times we'd have to compete with that. They'd have the Golden Fridays where they're giving their people Fridays off, and they had, all these little perquisites that the rest of us couldn't afford. And then they'd go and hire our people, right? And which is usually a good thing. I don't mind our customers hiring our guys, because that means we're doing something right, and it's usually not a bad thing. But it was difficult from a standpoint of competing against that, because it drives your wages up, and so it drives all your costs up. And so it was always interesting to me that how the whole time every few years we'd have a downturn or whatever, and the service side of the business would have to cut and slash, and yet it seemed like the E&P side was largely intact, and until 2016, right? That's really, and I think now
The death knell was last year.
Yeah,
Or
and
20, early 20.
it started in November 2014, and then it got worse throughout 2015.
Yeah,
it was
true.
really 2016, right? So I think 2016 is right when it started going down. And COVID was the icing on the cake, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But so I think we used to have going back to the 13 million square feet. There was probably a lot of that. I have no idea what the percentage would be, but I'd say a fairly sizable percentage of that was probably sitting empty regardless, because a lot of our customers would have 2 or 3 floors just so they could have contiguous space or whatever that they'd need for future expansion or whatever, right? So it wasn't like all that was gutted. Some of that was sitting empty already. But yeah, they've definitely they've resized, and I think with automation, with some of the things that have gone on, I don't see that office space being required for a long
We
time.
had somebody on here one time that he was so doom and gloom about it, and he turned out to be right. But we basically were like, well, let's just turn the podcast off. Like, this was brutal. If you are a commercial real estate person listening, because we have a huge Canadian audience as well,
Yep.
by the way.
Yep.
If you are a commercial real estate agent in Canada right now, you are turning the channel. You're like, oh
Right.
my God, this is terrible.
Yep.
That stinks.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah,
That's sad.
it does, because always referred to Calgary as kind of like North Houston,
Right.
and
Yeah, you need to get your stuff together like we have in America.
Yeah.
We obviously know what we're doing down here.
Yeah, clearly.
But it's funny because I see both sides of it, obviously, and I'm involved on both sides very deeply, and I look at there's so much virtue signaling that comes out of the Canadian side, and yet we have a bloody mess up there, right? I think we've taken on more debt than almost anybody in the G20, and I just had this lunch conversation today with a friend, and he said, people seem to have forgotten about debt and deficits and stuff, right? It doesn't seem to matter anymore. And so if you're a little bit more fiscally conservative and a little bit of right of center, I don't, again, whatever your political persuasion is, but if you believe just basic in fiscal prudence or whatever, that's out the window. People don't care anymore. I mean, you're starting to, it used to be billions were a big number. Now it's trillion. I mean, people can't even fathom it anymore, right? So it's become silly.
I think that was somebody's I was at the lunch talking about the other day. We need to change million and billion and trillion because they sound too much alike.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, education globally is I think could be improved. But to your point, it's amazing how people just assume that it's one and the same, and like, a couple of $1 trillion here is no big deal, and it's like, you have no idea. But anyways, we're gonna see the results of all that. But not to focus on doom and gloom. Let's talk about some positive stuff.
Sure.
I think
Wait, before we move away from Canada, real quick, if you know David and I's podcast, we just invite ourselves to whatever we want to go to. So when Stampede turns back on,
Yes, sir.
we humbly accept your invitation
100%.
for that Tuesday event.
And the Tuesday event, I will be all smiles, be ready to go at about 7 a.m. and be ready to shut her down at about whenever. But after that,
But don't call
you're
me
on
on
your own.
Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. I will not be there for you on Wednesday. How's that? But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
Tuesday I will be
You're
yours.
wise. I'm going to let him be on his own too after that day as well.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. No, it is a great time.
Yeah.
I'd love to
Well,
host
we
you guys
cheer
up
all the
there.
Canadian
Yeah.
friends. We wish you guys the best of luck because that is truly one of our favorite places.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let's talk about what you're up to now.
Yes,
so
sir.
we talked a little bit about Reliance. So tell us how Reliance and everything else fits in with
Okay.
the broad edge.
So I told you how we got involved with Edge Natural Resources there. So in the tail end of 2016, we had the opportunity to put a bid in for a flowback package, and so with their sponsorship, we were able to we were successful on that. It was kind of an interesting. It was a very interesting deal, and again, everybody was trying to fix their balance sheets, and so this was a company that had several different business lines, and they wanted to get rid of the one business line so that they could take care of their balance sheets. So we were able to pick that deal up, and we thought timing was pretty darn good. We'd been through the worst in 2016. We were able to basically a lot of our team came along for the ride. Very proud moment in my career where the guys all left what they were doing to come join us, and we started up Ideal Completion Services. And again, on a North American basis, we have Fort St. John. We had 6 operating bases, 7 operating bases, and throughout North America. And the guys all came along, and not only that, they wrote checks to come along, and which is, a great. I think it's a great model, right? And that's what we always tried to do with the pure energy side of things too. So, we started up Ideal Completion Services. Like I say, I thought timing was great. Nobody foresaw COVID hitting, obviously, but we grew very quickly out of the gate. I think after month 3, we were cash flow positive, and we never kind of looked back. And so it was good timing. And then within the broader Edge group, so that was in 2017. In 2018, Edge also bought a company called Ironclad Energy, and so provider of pump down pumps, so frac pumps for pump down purposes. And then through that acquisition, the CEO for that was also previously in the coil tubing business, and so we greenfielded. Well, didn't quite greenfield, but we bought a company called Wise Production Services out of Canada. It was a coil tubing provider, and that started up Gladiator Energy. And so we refurbed all those, and that's where I refer to the greenfield. We refurbed all those units, built a few new big, large diameter, deep extended reach coil units, and that was basically 2019 by the time that was all finished up. So those were the big companies that we had in under the umbrella, if you will. There's also a drilling company. Again, our friend Dave Hemsing, but obviously drilling isn't part of the completions platform, but that's also part of the Edge Natural Resources portfolio. So we were sitting around at the board level saying, okay, how do we ultimately try and manage our way through this? And we said, listen, at the end of the day, what the ultimate, like the nirvana for me would be to say, okay, we can keep our teams together for as long as we can, and if the opportunity presents itself for an IPO or some kind of a public exit where ENR, being a private equity group, they've got their liquidity needs, but we can keep the team together, right? And there's been a lot of loyal people, and they're friends, they're employees, they're family, right? So we decided that was the preferred way to try and organize ourselves. So that's when we created Edge OFS, and that was in 2019, is to be the umbrella corp, so that if an IPO opportunity presented itself, we'd be ready to go, because again, you want to get all your ducks in a row, right? From a process standpoint, from procedures, all those kinds of things. So at that point in time, we very naively thought, you know what, mid 2020 should be a good. We might be in good shape.
Everybody,
by then,
everybody
right?
thought 20 was going to be a good year.
100%.
Why wouldn't you? Shaping up
Exactly,
perfectly, yeah.
Exactly. And so
And it was until March.
Until March.
Somebody
Yep.
came up with this COVID stuff.
Exactly. Until somebody created that somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that was kind of our intention there, and that's why it was Edge OFS. And again, I always tell our guys, like, don't worry, Edge OFS isn't real. It's there to basically get our back of the house in order. You know, the companies are Ideal and Reliance and Ironclad and Gladiator, right? Those are the companies, and so you know, Edge OFS is just whirring away in the background, kind of in a support role, right? So that's where we have our IT and our HR and finance, and all those groups are on the Edge OFS level, so that we can split that out
Sure.
and have a higher
Consolidate
level.
the back
Yeah,
office.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart.
Exactly. So that's where we're at today.
How involved are you and is your management team at Edge to going out to each one of the different divisions? And do you call them divisions or what do you call it? Companies?
Yeah, divisions, companies,
Yeah.
either it's kind of interchangeable. So each division has a president, right? So and CEO. So that's where you know, I'm still the CEO of Ideal Completions. Charlie Prue, you'll meet tonight. Charlie's the president of Reliance, and then Chloe Gant's still CEO, president of Gladiator, right? So it's again, it's we're very involved. We're very much, you know, again, obviously there's been significant travel restrictions over the last little while, which has been the bane of, you know, we're all service guys now, right? We like to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get all the information, and glad to say that it looks like we can start traveling a little bit, and that those restrictions.
Well,
are
you
starting to
know,
lift.
two things on that note. One, we're contractually obligated to mention our sponsors whenever we can, and United Airlines is one of the sponsors in 2021. Is that what year we're in? 21?
Yeah, I think
So, which is
21.
pretty cool. And one of the things that they're going to do, because they're going to come on in the next couple of weeks, is talk about, like, what does travel look like back,
Yep.
you know, our new situation here. And that's part of it. And the other part is, you know, we have a Canadian office at our company, and this poor guy is great. He can't get out of Canada. He can't get out of the office. He's stuck up there, and
Right.
he just came down maybe a month ago for a couple days and went back, and he was okay. But now they've relocked you guys up, if I'm not mistaken, or it's hard to get out of Canada, which
Yeah,
is
so
crazy.
The border's locked. We share Montana in common. For the first time ever, I've had to rent out that because we knew we weren't going to be able to ski there for the winter, right? So, yeah, it's not good, and it's not easy. And so I'm leaving on Friday morning, and I'm going to see if I can get past. Hopefully, nobody from the Canada Customs and Border Patrol is listening. But
Well, we'll launch this late.
but yeah,
We'll get you back in the country.
So hopefully I'll have no issues getting back there, because they do have COVID jail. I keep calling it COVID jail. You're supposed to register for a hotel before you even go, and I'm not going to. I'm just going to go back in and act brash and just say, hey, listen, I'm working down here, right? And so I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep people from going to Phoenix for a
Sure.
golf trip, right? I don't think they're trying to keep people from working. So far we've had, again, on the drilling side, we've had some guys going back and forth. We've got a lot of people from Canada there that are running our rigs here in West Texas, and so they're going back and forth. It seems to be okay, but it really is. I mean, there's
How has it been communicating with your teams and divisions?
brutal. Yeah.
You know, I keep hearing, productivity, work from home. I am not buying it.
Productivity is down significantly.
Absolutely.
I don't care what
Okay.
anybody tells me. Like it's not the same. And looking at somebody over a screen and you know, all the jokes about, I wonder if they're wearing pants and all that kind of stuff, right?
They're
but
true.
I mean, it's true, but you know, I think it started out when it was kind of neat, right? Everybody was pretty engaged in the whole process. It was like, oh, okay, well, we can do this, right? And okay, we literally had a black swan event happen, and so you always try and prepare for a black swan when one comes at you, and things still go. That's pretty impressive,
Yeah.
right? So you're pretty excited about that, and I think everybody was very gung ho, and it wasn't that long until after that, and I started noticing, became a pet peeve of mine, where I'd start looking and seeing how many people, because you can always tell the people that start looking at their phones, right? And so now they're listening with one ear, and they're kind of, hey, Jim,
Yes.
what do you think? What? Sorry?
Yeah. Sorry, I
Right?
couldn't hear you. It broke
Couldn't
up.
hear you. Yeah, bad connection. I've got connectivity issues. That was the other one. I got a friend of mine he had the top quote for 2020 is "You're on mute."
Yeah.
Right. So I think anyway. So I think there's been a huge loss of productivity, but the hardest thing is that team, right? That element
Yes.
of team, that family, and people start going, and they start splintering off, right? So they start going their own directions, and I think your mind can go to weird spots when you're sitting in your den at home, and you've got kids that are, they're upset because they can't go to school. You've got all these different things tugging at you. You're hearing about layoffs left, right, and center. I think your mind can go into some pretty dark spaces pretty quickly. And then that's kind of exacerbated by the way we drive revenue is out in the field. And so that wasn't stopping. Well, it did for a little while, but intermittently that was still going on. And so I was very, very conscientious. The last thing I wanted to do is give the impression that you guys go ahead and go out there and put yourself at risk. But, here in the office, we can't do that, right? So I was back in the office kind of in April, even though we weren't supposed to be. I just started going back in the office. It was good for my mental well-being, just for a sense of normalcy, right? And then people just started coming back in, and we still, to this day, going back to the restrictions that we have in Calgary, I mean, there's 4 phases of reopening there, 1 being the most restrictive, 4 being kind of wide open. The return to the office scenario is under phase 4. And so people still aren't supposed to be going to the office now.
Listen, this is the biggest debate other than, is your microphone on? The other second thing that people talk about the most is what is the right thing to do? And I'm not here to solve it one way or the other. I will say that I've always loved Texas. I'm from Texas. I was born here. I've never been so happy to live anywhere in the world than Texas in the last 12 months. Because I know things have been different. I know this. But I got to be honest, my life doesn't feel, other than the travel, I used to travel quite a bit.
Right.
Other than the travel, I haven't really noticed. Maybe some restaurants are smaller here and there, but I really haven't noticed it.
I still think Josh is who gave me COVID back in July.
Oh my God, that was the funniest thing. That was
that's the last time you and I spoke, because I was wondering if you were going to go up north.
Yeah.
And you had COVID. That's right, because you were supposed to go to Alaska.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that.
I'm gonna tell the story. So David and I very rarely get to tell the story because I don't like to say it, but we were on a private plane together, and we were out for an event in Midland, and this was right in the middle of it. Right, so being within 2 feet of anybody was terrifying. Nobody knew what to do. So whatever, we kind of went out and took our chance, and
we drank our share of tequila.
A lot of tequila that trip, which I view as helping me survive COVID.
Hopefully, Flecha Azul.
Yeah, Flecha Azul. It was an event at Aaron Marquez's place actually. So we go out there and we all come back. There's 4 or 5 of us on the plane. We get back, and then everybody knows the next day David has to go to get tested so he can go to Alaska for this prepaid trip with his father that's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And he calls me the next day, and he is just, "Hey, you gave me COVID." He's so pissed. I start laughing. I go, "I don't have COVID." He's like, "Yes, you do." He's like, "I know it was you. I know you gave it to me." And I didn't have it. I don't think I had it. And he is just lighting me up, and I can't stop laughing. I feel terrible because I know he's lost a ton of money.
Oh, no.
But so then he goes and has to tell people, "Hey, just to let you know," which is like the call of shame. Like, "Hey, I'm sorry."
Especially back then.
Yes,
yeah.
but I have COVID. I'm sorry to put you. And everyone's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." We took our chances. And then before he'd hang up, he's like, "Just so you know, Josh gave it to me. I know Josh." So
you've been a scapegoat for about a year now, yeah.
I've been telling that story the whole time. It's so funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, look, we all took our chances, I feel terrible. I don't think I gave it to you, but I've always felt.
No, I know. I don't know. That's the funny thing. You never know where you're going to get this stuff from, but yeah, it's interesting. I definitely want the Canadian border open back up, because let me tell you, even though we joked that Whitefish, Montana, is Canadian for Tijuana, we've got way too many Californians coming into Montana. We need our Canadian brethren back.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they're selling those houses in Sacramento for $1 million and moving to places that are cool.
Yeah, exactly. So
bring us back, David. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought on that story. Just cracks me up.
Everybody was fairly cool about it, which was nice. But man, it was terrible. It was like, the worst thing is, it's like, with an STD, they know how to kind of treat that, I guess. And you called up some of your older buddies who are older, who are at risk deal, and you were hugging each other, talking about all this stuff. You go, hey man, I might have gave you COVID. It was nice knowing you. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's like it's the most awful.
That's
thing
exactly
in the
what it
world.
was. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, before we leave, I think that's one of the awkward things. So I was here in January, and we were trying to get together in January. But one of the issues I had, so I went to the field, and unbeknownst to me, walked into this super spreader event. There's all these guys that ended up having COVID, and so I was making the rounds, and I was a little bit more careful on this trip because I was, you know, Denver, Tulsa, North, you know, Brighton, Midland, Houston, all these different places I was going to visit. But then I find out that one of the guys that was on location had COVID and tested positive. And so now it's like, now what do I do? I'm going to Tulsa to go meet with
You
the
stop the trip,
office.
you tell everybody.
Right,
Yeah.
with the bankers and everything else. I'm going to meet a whole bunch of people. I've got all these meetings lined out, and I'm going, I don't know what I should do here. So, because the other thing is, if I did test positive, then now all of a sudden I'm stuck in, at the time I was in Tulsa, and I'm in a hotel room in Tulsa for 14 days. Well, I love Tulsa, but
You'll
you
live
know,
14
14 days in the old Marriott, whatever, downtown, that's not a whole bunch of fun either, right? So it quickly kind of just ballooned a little bit, right? Or snowballed, because you just, all of a sudden it gets real, because then you need the test to come back, right? They won't let you on a plane without a test to come back. So anyway, so that is a bit of a factor that you still have to consider now, right? Because you're right, it's all of a sudden this, do I have to start calling all the, if I did, and thankfully I didn't get it, but it would have been somewhat embarrassing to have to call all these people and say, hey, listen.
I could keep talking about this. The part of this, John Daniel,
Oh yeah.
he outed me to everybody. Once he heard that, he called my whole office. Hey, does Josh have COVID? So then I had to come into the office, and everyone's like, hey, do you have COVID? I said, what? I said, did DeRode call you? He said, no, John Daniel called me. I'm like, golly, this is it's getting sold
Well,
out here.
To John's credit, you know, he's such a germaphobe. He did call me every day
To check on
just
you.
to check on me, make sure I was still alive. And it was so, you know, I wish I had really something important to tell people, but, you know, my wife, she thought I was going to be in Alaska, so she took off with our son, and the day before I found out. So I totally ruined her, you know, time away. I'm stuck at the house. The dogs aren't even there. I can't go get the dogs, so now I got COVID. I mean, it was a disaster.
Oh,
I was
man.
very frustrated, but I had
Sorry,
JD
that
called
is-
to check on
that's
me, and
the-
Josh, every time I talked to him, laughed at me. So,
Scapegoat.
I'm still
friend,
cracking
yeah.
up. My eyes are watering if you're
Yeah.
watching this. This
Yeah.
is funny. So, I mean, get us moving, because I
Yeah,
could just keep cracking up about that.
So talk to us about, from your perspective, what we're seeing in the oil field right now. I mean, we've got an oil price that, under normal circumstances, would buoy some activity, which we're seeing some uptick in activity, but you know, the confidence is not there. There's still a lot of unknown. What are you guys seeing? What are you guys thinking? And I know asking you to tell us what your crystal ball looks like, and everybody's has got mud all over it right now.
It's
so.
very cloudy, but I'm feeling better than I have. Let's go back to earlier comment. I thought mid 2020 was going to be a good year, right? And I thought the second half of 2020 was going to be good because things were starting to line out, and I think COVID is just going to exacerbate all that. So, you know, there's on so many different ways. So if I look at for down here, I think, you know, everybody has been very much focused on capital discipline, right? Which I was at a conference last year in New York, and we were talking about capital discipline in the Permian, and I kind of laughed. I said, you know, because there's been such a lack of capital discipline in the Permian, every other basin in North America has had to have extreme capital discipline, right? So the fact that we've got capital discipline now in the Permian, and I do think it's there to stay. I mean, we're seeing the rig counts go up, and you're seeing the private equity money come in a little bit, but people aren't spending 200% of cash flow again. That's just my opinion, right? I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to be
It will doom us
right
if they do it.
right, and I don't think the banks will let it happen. I don't think, you know, any of the boards are going to let it happen. It's going to be a percentage of cash flow, so somewhere around that 70, 80. If you have a really good prospect, maybe one year you go a little higher or whatever. But I think by and large, the gold rush money seems to be gone, and so now it's a little bit more okay. We got to run this as a business. We actually have to make money. So that feels a lot better. I think there's a huge amount of pent-up demand. Lots of people say travel isn't going to come back. I call BS on that. I think travel's coming.
Agreed.
I think any surplus oil that might be there is going to dissipate very quickly with demand coming back once these economies do fully open up, which I still think is probably somewhere end of Q3, somewhere between the end of Q2 and end of Q3. I still think that's
a fair guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think there's pent-up demand there. I think that's going to bode well. I think this time around, again, what got us in the hot water initially was the Saudis saying, all right, enough of this, right? Enough of the gold rush money. And so they took the long game in 2014, and they were pretty successful at it, and like going where we're at today. But what they did back then wasn't economic, and now I think they're fairly committed to establishing a higher oil price, and all their activities seem to kind of point in that direction, right?
But can I ask you a question,
Yeah,
though,
of
in
course.
that regard? Do you think we would not have ended up eventually at the same place we ended up had the Saudis not acted? And the reason I ask that is you look at all the money that came into, you want to call it the shale boom, the shale revolution, whatever.
Yeah.
And the capital destruction people talk about, never mind the fact that we provided low cost energy prices, cost of energy to people. But I'm seeing all of that gold rush money now go green.
Right.
And I think to a degree that's great to see, right? That's always been there. Neat new emerging technologies that have promise should get investment, but you're seeing this flood of capital go in that direction, and I think kind of similar to what we saw with the shale boom, more or less, if you want to call it that, is we're going to see that in the green revolution. Everybody's got the green drug in their system, because there's only so much room for so much capital, right, to a point where you're putting capital to work in places where it just can't go to work. Do you think we'll see in, say, a year or two, after the billions, if not trillions of dollars get invested chasing the green drug, and we see a buoyed oil price start to come up and gas price start to come up, because we're not in a position where we can totally transition away from oil and natural gas, that we'll see some of that capital kind of flow back into the space, or try to?
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I think I'm not very smart, so I kind of try and keep it
I'm not
simple as far
either,
as two things: fear and greed, right? And fear has been there to establish, everything. When fear is in the air, there's always two sides to everything, right? So when fear is in the air, you take the negative, everything gets all the headline press and everything else. But at the end of the day, greed comes in there as well, and so you're even seeing it today a little bit, David. Like, I think there's sector rotation. There's money coming back into the sector. I mean, there's money coming in both on the producer side and on the service side, because it's just the valuations are so ridiculously low, right? So, So yeah, I fully agree with that. I think we've seen a lot of that with cannabis too, right? Where there was all the money going to pick winners on the cannabis side, and then all of a sudden there's the music stops and there's not charge for everybody, and so
right,
and so then where's the next piece? So I agree with you. I think money will come back in. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what the model is going to be, right? And that's where I'm interested to see what that looks like. Is it going to be the same as it was before, or are they going to be looking for maybe a new twist on things, right? There's been a lot of comparisons, which I hate these comparisons, but they're out there. So about oil being the next tobacco, right? And all that. Well, tobacco, after it went through what it went through, has come back quite nicely, right? And they're making good money on tobacco, but they're paying huge dividends. It's our business historically isn't much of a dividend kind of model, because of the ups and downs in it. It's tough to have that dividend side to it, but I'm reminded of the income trust model that we ran in Canada for a little while, which was very successful, even though you'd historically not. And for those of you that don't know, the income trust model it was basically you pay out your pre-tax income. It got shut down. As a company, it was great because you never had income taxes. From an investor standpoint, it was great because you weren't getting dividends, which were after tax on the company level. And yes, you get a bit of a tax break as an investor, but you'd rather have the bigger piece that's pre-tax from the company side, right? So yeah, you paid a little bit more money on your distributions from a tax standpoint, but you got more money to make up for it. So I was actually talking to a friend who's the investment banking side, and I said, if only the trust model could come back, because this would be perfect for it. Yeah. And he said they've actually been sending letters to our friends in Ottawa asking for exactly that. If you want to stimulate the economy and stimulate money coming back into the sector, that would be a great way to do it. But so I think that's, for me, is going to be what not a question of if, but when it comes back, what are the triggers, right? What do we need to do as an industry to bring that capital, attract that capital? ESG is probably, obviously that's the acronym of the well, probably for the next decade.
I'm glad David kind of alluded to that, and I wanted to follow up.
Yeah.
I think it's just like anything, right? When you don't know what you don't know, it's maybe a little scary here or there. Scary, maybe not the right word, but just annoying, because like, well, wait a minute, we're already doing this stuff. Well, yeah, we are doing these things, but we're not telling people about it, which is part of our problem, as an industry, which is, again, part of this. Hopefully the podcast is part of that solution. So I am curious to know, from a leadership standpoint, with the different companies you guys have, what does ESG look like to you? Because I the more I get into it, it's really just telling the story of things we're already doing, and then maybe focusing on some things we're not, which are things worthy of focusing on anyway.
Couldn't agree more. I think, when I look back, generally what I tell my guys all the time is ESG is where HSE was 15 years ago, right? Yeah. It's, HSE was kind of a buzzword for a while, and then it's become so prevalent, like it just became mainstream, right? So it was everything we do and now HSE, like we've built a pyramid that we always use internally, which we've got our Mission Zero as our operating platform, and it's a combined HSE and quality platform, because the two are so intertwined now that you have to have both. You can't have one without the other, right? So it's in my mind a bit foolhardy to have an HSE platform that's separate from a quality platform. They are one and the same. And closely layered above that now are the elements of ESG, right? So, and to your point, Josh, I think that's where it gets interesting, because, if I look back at our flowback, for example, part of the reason we came down in 2004 to the Jonah field is because we had closed loop vessels. So we had closed loop systems. So there was nothing going to atmosphere, right? And it was economic for a customer at the time. That's what they wanted. They wanted to capture all the gas, but there was definitely, we called it the green completion. This was back in 2004. And so you're right. It's part of what we do, but we as an industry have to figure out how to A, get the data, and B, what to do with the data once it's created, right? And in such a way that it helps our customers. And that's the way I look at it. I'm a service guy. I need to help my customers look good. If I can help my customers look good, they're going to want to use me, right? So ESG is definitely a huge component of that. But basic things like good board governance. I mean, that's not specific to, right? That's just
you should be doing that.
Yeah, it should just be
or
good.
You shouldn't be in business.
Business practice, right?
And that's what I've been preaching so much, particularly with like the Energy ESG Council, which we're actually having our first in-person board meeting next week, which I'm excited about. Last year was somewhat of a lost year, but all of this starts with good governance. But it's if you've got good governance, and if you've got a board and a management team and a company aligned with the concept that there's always room for continuous improvement, and the only way you can do that is if you're measuring, because you can't manage what you can't measure. In regards to that, and kind of the challenges your customers have, both from an economic perspective and a perception perspective. Are y'all doing anything differently as it relates to the way you manage and run your businesses? Is there technology that you're utilizing to help you better understand not only your business, but to also help your customers better understand what they're trying to do? That's a differentiator.
That's a big loaded question, but so I'll answer that in a couple different ways. I think first, the reality, and this goes back to your comment as well, Josh, is some of it we're already doing. So I actually had the conversation this morning where it was like, okay, let's figure out where the benchmark is, right? So let's encapsulate everything that we're already doing today, which we know that we might not be bragging about because it hasn't been that important, but there's some real significant things that we do on a day-to-day basis that are already important. Again, going back to the green completion, which we've been doing since in Canada, that was a requirement in the 90s, right? So it's been going on for a long time. And so what are we doing today? And then let's develop a strategy, because you need a strategy, because I do think it's customer by customer right now, because again, if I'm in the business of making my customer look good, I need to know what the triggers are for that customer. And so it is a bit of a choose your own adventure, right? Every one of them seems to be a bit of a, how do we take, so we're getting into the habit of asking our customers, what are your trigger points, right? Where do you, I had a lunch last July with a customer where we were sitting at lunch and I was talking about ESG, and I said, we're talking about, things we could do on a closed loop basis, and that how we had to get rid of open tops and we had to just capture all the gases and vapor recovery units and et cetera, et cetera. And I kept mentioning ESG, and he just finally stops me. He says, remind me, what is ESG? And so I told him. And so he, okay, yeah, thanks. And so fast forward to, I think it was early February this year, we talked to the same guy, and now he's gotten a mandate from his board and he's fully up to speed, right? So in that short of a time span, he's really come up to speed. But now I need to understand what his board is telling him where they need to focus, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a bit of a choose your own adventure. You got to figure out where to fit, and we're not big enough to sit there and say, here, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do from an ESG standpoint. We are going to look at it from a customer by customer basis and start out with what we already do. We're in the process of starting up we have an ESG strategy. One of the things being private equity backed, that a luxury we afforded ourselves last year was to not shut down our innovation. We've got a little innovation team. And so the innovation team, their whole mandate is to develop new technologies, has to be with ESG in mind, right? And not just to become more beneficial, but how we can measure it and how we can sell it, right? It's got to be in your commercial model, because it still has to make sense from an economic standpoint, right? So I think that's where now we can start putting our own flavor on where we're going to take ESG and build out our strategy a little bit. So it is like I say, it's kind of a multi-layer response. I don't know if it was clear enough, but
it's the perfect answer, because one of the things you just said was we're not big enough. And before, I'm glad David took this conversation that way. The big companies it's like McDonald's, right? They have a different pressure than a small business does. The companies at your size, and really even a leader like you, like, it's important for people to hear a leader, with all respect. I mean, some people are going to listen have never heard of you, they've never heard of the company.
Sure.
But to know that people that are in Canada, in Denver, in Houston, wherever, are doing this with a willing attitude is important, because we do want these stories to be told. We do want the industry to be looked at in the light that it should be looked at, because as you mentioned, I mean, you guys are doing things from 2004
right.
that you're probably just now advertising it in a way that's not just commercially viable.
Right.
The interesting thing about ESG is that I don't think a lot of people fully understand it, because they don't understand its origin. I mean, this was This all started from a comment that Kofi Annan, who's Secretary General of the UN in 1999, made at Davos that sparked into what became the UN Global Compact, which then turned into the UN Sustainability Goals, the SDGs. There's 17 of them, I guess. And I think they're everything that a lot of people can agree on. They're aspirational, they make you feel good, etc. And the crazy thing is, when I think about the energy industry, and I work with a lot of the energy industry, operators, service companies, etc. I know these companies inside and out, the boards, the management teams, the people. The industry as a whole really is not that far off track if you think about what the intent was. I think the interesting thing is how this concept is somewhat nebulous and very subjective, somewhat nefarious with some groups in terms of where they're trying to take it. But I think the industry needs to embrace this, is that opportunity to turn this into kind of round 2 or 3 at their PR attempt to not only beat our chest and say all the good things we do, but educate everybody who's trying to figure it out, because I think there's a lot of misinformation there. But again, it's how you package that information, educate people, be respectful of their interpretations of things, and try to get them there. I think there's some people you're just never going to get there. It's almost become a religion.
That's what Crenshaw said.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So this has been a great discussion.
When David wraps it up with Kofi Annan,
Yeah.
that it's been a great discussion.
You throw out the Kofi Annan. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Kofi
I think
Annan
one of our
passed
prime
away.
ministers was trying to
Did he
get
really?
his job. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's another story.
Yeah.
When did he pass away?
I want to say it was last year or the year before.
I didn't
last.
realize he had.
Yeah. But anyways, obviously mixed emotions on that gentleman, but certainly, wish him and his family well. With that being said,
we're going to delete that part.
Kofi.
Pour some out for Kofi. Holy shit! Yeah, we're going to delete that.
Wish him and his family. That was good.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty funny. Oh man.
Kofi, wherever you are. Yeah. Aces, buddy.
shit,
Aces.
that is
Tupac.
Oh god, that's
shit.
funny. All right, sorry.
Well, yeah. Do you want to close this out, or do you want me to? Because we always ask our guests, and we'll
Exactly. I don't know. We might have to leave that in. That's pretty funny.
No, I don't want to be that. That would be truly disrespectful.
Well, listen. So you've never been on a podcast before.
No.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Yes.
You've heard our podcast.
Yes, I have.
So you know what we're about to hit you with at the end of this podcast.
No, I do not.
Oh, that tells me you haven't.
Can we
listened.
borrow $20?
Yeah, exactly.
How much money do you have in your pocket right
Yeah,
now?
exactly. No.
One of the things that we ask, so we always tell people, like, it's very difficult for someone coming into the industry or that would like to meet you to get a full hour of their time or your time.
Yep.
So it's going to be, before when we were off air, we were talking about how many people are going to hear this, and you're going to be very surprised by the outreach that it has. So if this might be the only person or the only time that anybody gets to interact with you, really. And so we always say, if there was a piece of advice or a pearl of wisdom that you could pass along to a 20-year ago version of you, or a person or just getting into the industry, is there something you would like to pass on to them, or something that you live by, a credo that you live by?
You know what? I think, honestly, be open for what life throws at you, right? Those are things, challenge yourself. If you would have asked me, 20 years ago, would I be CEO of an oilfield services company, I would have said not a chance. And, have confidence, but have humility, right? So don't ever think you're the smartest guy in the room. Just always make sure that you operate with humility. And then it's the same thing I tell my kids. If you want to just treat people how you want to be treated, right? And always think about what the flip side could look like. And you do that, and things will go well for you, right? And you'll get into things that guaranteed that you never thought were possible, or you never really aspired to, or you'll do things that you just weren't kind of down the wheelhouse, right? But have the ability to be open to new things, and don't be scared. Don't be scared.
I'll have to be we get these answers all the time, and obviously we have our own personal, but that one hits me the hardest. I believe that to be one of the biggest truths that's available. Try, keep an open mind, and just go and see what happens. Don't be afraid.
Yep.
We had one of our guests on here that he said, his line was, "They're not going to eat you," and I just love that.
That's awesome.
That's a great one. Yeah,
That
just
is.
don't be afraid.
That was Clay Williams, wasn't it?
Oh, it's been a minute. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think it was.
I just loved it. They're not going to eat you. So this has been great.
It has
This
been.
great.
Thank
So
you.
what we also want to do is give you a chance to promote any website, or what do you guys? Where should people go to look for your stuff?
Yeah, www.edgeofs.com, and
So we're laughing at you here because
the
this
3
is-
W's.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've dated yourself quickly. Our millennial friends are like, "What do you?" Nobody
Oops.
says www.
I did start out saying I was old, so there you go. Yeah, OFS, edgeofs.com, and then that
Us
takes you
millennials
to
like David and I here. So
yeah, exactly. That'll take you to the individual links, but yeah.
I'm
that's,
sorry. One more time. What is it?
edgeofs.com.
Okay. Okay.
I got to share one thing with y'all last night that I
This
thought
has
was
been a good one.
so
this is
funny.
entertaining.
I met up with a friend of mine for a quick adult beverage before we went to the baseball game, because I was on father duty, which I always enjoy. But anyways, in the restroom, there's a sign that says, the waiter to the patron, "Sir, how would you like your steak?" And the patron says to the waiter, the same way when I argue with my wife and win. And the waiter says back to the patron, "So rare, sir."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so David, it is good to be back.
Yeah,
This has
it's
been
good to
great. Rutger, Niers, thank
Yes,
you
sir.
for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's
been
really
great.
been a pleasure. Quite enjoyable story. Canadians, tell our friends up north we love them. We
Thank
miss
you.
them. Hope they're doing well.
Well wishes.
Yes. Yes. So, David, is there anything you want to finish up with?
No.
Okay.
This has been fun. I'm glad we were finally able to get Rutger down
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And we got some more exciting guests on the way.
Yeah, we do.
And with things starting to
Some
open
big
back up.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
big stories that are going to come out.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great year for the podcast. As always, we appreciate all our supporters and listeners, and the podcast is huge. It's growing, so look us up at oilfield360.com. Check us out on all of our social media channels. Usually it's just oilfield360. We're on every one of them. Flecha Azul, Tequila, United Airlines, Simmons, Prang.
Yeah, I also
Lockton.
want to make sure some people know about some friends of ours that we've been supportive of some podcasts they've done. We've got Leslie Byer with the Energy Workforce and
Yes.
Technology Council. She's doing the Energy and Transition podcast here. We got our friend Wesley Hunt and his brother.
Yeah, they're killing it, by the way.
Yeah, great podcast called In the Hunt, and tackling some
Their video
really good
got,
issues.
I think it was 100,000 views. The other day. That's a lot of views.
And it was great.
Yeah.
We got Galtway Industries, highly capable podcast. And we got Jeff Peoples doing a podcast. Was it Mission
So
Zero?
yeah, you've been gone so long. People are just—it's like sneaking in here.
They're sneaking in our podcast
Seriously,
studio.
they're sneaking in. They're doing podcasts here, drinking all of our Flecha, quite honestly,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
an issue.
that's
But
why
we have to
they're
get
doing
on
We
that.
got to start charging.
We do. We'll tackle that later.
Yeah.
As we like to finish these up, if you have any complaints, questions that something didn't sound right, email those to david@oilfield360.com. If you have any compliments on how great this was, send them to josh@oilfield360.com.
The one thing I did not do today is comment on the laces.
Not
And
just laces. Look at these shoes.
Well,
Those
not only
are-
the shoes, but
I
also
was
the sock
checking
choice
those out.
today.
These are awesome. These are the new Cole Haan kind of casuals. I
Very
love
nice.
them.
Yeah.
I'm hip. I don't say www to anything.
Oh man.
Looks like you got
I'm,
those in
I'm
your
never
Easter
gonna live that
basket
one
or
down.
something, you know.
I did. I mean, look
Yeah.
at me. I got my Masters shirt on.
yeah.
I'm going to the Astros game tonight.
Yeah.
So that's it. Again,
Great.
thank you for your time,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah,
David,
appreciate
thank
to see you,
for
Rutger.
everything.
Thank you.
Naro,
Great to see
thank you.
you.
Jonathan's
Thank
out today, so thank you for stepping in and getting us going. If you have any questions, give us a call. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.